Welcome to the Lighthouse Financial Advisors Money Over 50 podcast with Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Lighthouse Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50. Dallas, today we're going to look at a case study.
We are.
Remarkably, this lady's name is Jane Smith. We don't even have to change her name to Jane Smith for the purposes of...
Yeah, it's a real surprise. Every client of ours apparently is named John and Jane Smith.
So, tell us about Jane.
So, Jane first came in to meet with me in June of 2015. So that was 4.5 years ago now as we're recording this. She is a single woman, and in that first meeting we had a bit of a snapshot of where she was at. She had about $240,000 in superannuation, about $250,000 in an investment, and about $13,000 in cash in her own bank account. So just over $500,000 of what we would consider retirement savings. So this was all money that was kind of earmarked for her to retire on in the future. So she just turned 51, which, as you see this all the time, most people it's either sort of 50 or 55 are those ages where they really go, geez, I need to really focus on this and start ramp it up. So we discussed what her kind of retirement plans were. She didn't really have anything concrete that she wanted to retire by a certain date or anything like that. But the big thing for her was she really loves to travel. So travel is really important. And she wanted the ability to be able to retire a bit earlier if possible. So age 61 was kind of something we tossed around that gave us that 10-year sort of mark, and she was sort of happy with that. So, and she wanted to retire on about $50,000 a year in today's dollars. So what we really needed to look at here was the trade-off between she definitely didn't want to put every spare dollar she had towards retirement and trying to grow her super as quickly as possible. For her, it was about getting where she needed to be over the next 10 years, but also being able to go on an extended trip, sort of on average about once every year. That was going to cost a fair bit, and because she really wanted to do some bigger trips that she could do while she was young and fit and healthy and able to get around easily.
It's an interesting conversation, isn't it? So, we have that conversation at the start when we meet people for the first time, potential new clients, and you arrive at a happy medium most of the time. I mean, that's our natural resting position. You have to give up a little bit to pull the lever to make
things
happen. Make some real gains. But you don't want to take that too far because you lose out on quality of life.
That's right.
During that period of time. So it's the balance. And I think we're really good at working that out. And I think one of the biggest fears that people have before they come to see us is that we're going to take all their money away from them.
That's
and they're not going to be able to have any fun.
Which you have all the time, where people will come in. Before they come in for a meeting, they go, we went and bought a new computer and went on this trip and did this, just in case you wanted to take all their money away from
it. So, I mean, it's far from the point. I mean, we're a big believer. I mean, we both love to travel. Everyone here that works with us loves to travel. We like the balance of life. But we're very good at actually being able to put enough away to get ahead as well.
And that's what, so as I go through this, you'll see that another part of it to me is if you're trying to, even if someone comes in and says to me, I want to give up, I just want to focus purely on retiring early, and I just want to put every spare dollar I can, and I'm going to live on baked beans until I get to this target. I've heard people say that before, and I've seen people try and do that. And the reality is they just don't stick to it.
They don't stick to it.
It's not sustainable. It's not
sustainable. And I mean, far from being psychologists, you'd have to say why.
Yeah,
And there'd be I mean, I just don't think we would have. That wouldn't be the type of client that we'd want to work with.
No,
there wouldn't be a good fit there.
It's always
because we have a fundamental difference of philosophy.
Well, you find with a lot of people, there's always parts of people's work that they don't enjoy. But if someone comes in and says, I just really hate my job, I can't stand it, I just want to get out as soon as possible. Yeah. My instinct would be to go, well, why don't work there another week? If you really can't stomach it that much.
Yeah, that's right. And
that's
take a pay cut. Work for half the money.
Yeah.
Find something you love.
Yeah. Or even something you can stomach.
Even something you can stomach and work for half the money.
Yeah.
Look, certainly, because there's a new movement. We're digressing here. We're turning another 10-minute podcast into a 40-minute podcast. The FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early.
You sound like a real old geezer when you talk about this, because you go, it's just all nonsense.
Well, it's funny because we both listen to Animal Spirits, and those guys were saying these are, I guess, in the financial planning industry in America, and they were both saying they couldn't imagine retiring early because they love their jobs. Yeah, and I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking, I really love this. Yeah. We work with we only work with clients who we fit in with. So,
right.
If there's some sort of philosophical mismatch there, then they go and find someone else, or that they don't ever become a client. So there's no friction there at all.
Yeah.
Look, it's something that you couldn't imagine.
No, that's right.
Putting every single cent and having no lifestyle right now. Yeah. Putting it all away so you could get out of that role.
And that is a conversation. the change of we've discussed this before. You've actually had clients who a case study that you did already about this, where as they got closer to retirement, they realised that it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to retire and stop working. They didn't have something that they wanted to fill those 40 hours a week on. They just had some parts of their job that they were really, really into. And so it was really just about trying to craft a bit of a career transition where they could just be focused more and more, spend more of their time on doing those things and not on the work that they didn't enjoy. So, and even from a financial point of view, that's the types of people that we're talking about here, where people that want that balance of life and are happy to potentially, they don't want to necessarily retire at 55. They are happy to work, into 60 and a bit beyond. Yep. It makes your retirement planning a lot easier as well, because if you're working for another 10 years versus another 5 years, if you've only got 5 years to go, you really have to do a lot of the work yourself. Your retirement savings, they don't have the same amount of time to compound in the background. You don't have all those years of tax savings that you could be picking up. All those different levers that we normally pull on a compressed timeline. It's sort of not, if you want to retire in 5 years instead of 10 years, it's not twice as hard. It's about three times as hard.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Time is one of the biggest resources that we have as financial advisors. That's right. So if we have time, it makes so much more of a difference. Yeah. So with the compounding. Yeah. Sorry, mate. I've hijacked halfway through the.
As per usual,
so continue.
Yeah. So, but I think that's a good point. Is that as we go through this, it's not about most of these case studies that we're looking at. It's not about going, this person now magically has so much more money than they had before, and look at us, look at this great work we've done. It's about saying they've lived the lifestyle that they want, while they've also been able to achieve these financial goals. So for this person, when they came in, we were kind of limited as to the levers we could pull there. So her spare cash flow was limited, given that she had those travel plans and she had those goals. So we could really only salary sacrifice $200 a fortnight, which we worked out was about the right trade-off between travelling now and getting in a position to retire early. Yep. So because at that time we were salary sacrificing that, the net cost to her from after-tax income was about $130 a fortnight, based on her income. Now Now, the other lever we could pull, there was a big one for her, was that she was actually in a defined benefit account. And so I won't go into too much detail about how defined benefit accounts work and the rest of it, but basically the trade-off that you have to look at there is a defined benefit amount. A defined benefit account is calculated based on your salary or your final salary when you finish up work, and then a multiple of that salary. So for this person, because she had no plans to try and climb up the ladder and get promoted in the future and go on to a higher income, she was just planning to tick along and keep doing this for the next 10 years. We looked at it, and basically the trade-off was that we could move her out of the defined benefit account and actually have that money in what they call an accumulation account, which is a standard superannuation account, which we could then invest more aggressively, given that she had 10 years to go until she wanted to retire. So again, we won't digress here and get into the whole investing. We've recorded another podcast about this just recently, but again, that's one of the levers we could pull, is to say, if you're happy to work for the next 10 years, we can let the money that you've already built up in your super account, we can let that grow in the background, let that do some of the work for you, rather than having it all be based on your contributions going in.
Yes. So. Yeah, look, a good podcast to listen to would be
investing is the worst form of retirement
planning, excepting for all others.
Yeah.
That'll give you a case study of the difference between a 4% rate of return, which a defined benefit returns about that. Returns about a 4% rate of return generally on average per annum, versus an 8% rate of return. So you'll see the differences in one person's retirement outcomes just by changing and being able to generate an 8% rate of return on their money versus a 4% rate of return. So that's a good one to listen to if you're looking at the differences there.
And that it ties into exactly this one, because as part of that podcast we discussed that if you are happy to get a lower return, there's no magic bullet there. You have to trade that off somewhere else. So in this case, when we spoke about this, she definitely didn't want to live on less income in retirement, or work for longer, or give up more money now. So we said, right, well, we really need to work that money.
Now that's interesting. So you had that conversation, and that conversation has to come at the start, because that conversation helps form the context of the plan or the financial strategies that you're going to use. That's right. Because you go, okay, I know what I have to work with now. I have $200 a fortnight of before tax dollars. I have 10 years. I have all of these things. We know that you're not going to get promoted too much. We're going to assume you earn the same salary. So you work all those parameters and you go, okay, what other levers can we pull here?
That's right. So it was interesting because we changed the investment strategy the investment that she had as well as her superannuation. We invested that more aggressively, to try and grow that as much as possible over that 10 years. Now, most people's worst nightmare occurred, which was that was June 2015. We had our first meeting. We had a few of, as part of our initial process, we have a few meetings before we implement any of these changes. By the time we had those meetings, put all these changes in place, and she came back in for what we call a confirmation meeting in September of 2015. The market had already dropped by 10%. So people's worst nightmare is, I'm going to invest this money, and then the share market or the price of all of these companies is going to drop by 10%. So that actually happened in this case. Now, luckily, as part of that advice process, as you said, we talk about this at length, about the trade-off between these things, and she was well aware that this was not just a possibility but a probability at some stage, that there was going to be a drop of at least this magnitude pretty much every year. So she wasn't worried by that, which was good. I'm sure that if she'd just filled in the paperwork and sent it off and hadn't had those conversations, and then all of a sudden her balances dropped by 10%, it'd be panic stations.
Yes, and look, a lot of people, a lot of financial advisors try to dilute that, and they try to gloss over that. And there's a talk about, if the market ever drops, we're very careful to say when. Because it's going to happen.
That's right.
It's a naturally occurring thing. It's just like the price of bananas.
Oh, here we go. The price of bananas again.
It's like the price of bananas growing when a cyclone goes through North Queensland and like
supply
takes
and
out
demand
supply.
curves are changed. Yes.
And of course, when supply comes back on, what happens?
Yeah.
The price of bananas drops.
Yeah. Yeah.
No one panics.
No, that's
during that
right.
period of time. So it's a naturally occurring thing.
Yeah.
And the price of your house, by the way, drops as well. Because if you were to auction it off every on the first of the month every year, you would find that there's wild fluctuations of price swing. So so it's one of those discussions again. We have that at the start and say to people, it's when it happens, not if.
And especially, I think over say the last 10 years, that's why it's so important for us to. So over the last 10 years, there's been fairly limited volatility. Again, we're going to digress here.
Such limited volatility.
It's been very limited. So a drop of 10% is the average intra-year. So every year, on average, if you're invested aggressively, your superannuation will drop by 10% or more every single year.
Every single year.
So, and that was kind of the because we'd had that discussion when she came in for that meeting to say, yes, everything's been put in place, everything's changed. Oh yeah, by the way, your balance has dropped by 10%. That wasn't a shock. It was all expected. It was all part of the course. So now everything ticked along. There was no major changes to her situation. Now, I've just made a note here of, as we were going through our progress meetings every 6 months, some of the discussions that we had.
Yep.
So, in 18 months after that, we, as part of our progress meeting, Jane Smith came in and sort of said, "Geez, I'm really getting sick of my job. I think I want to try and retire earlier if possible. I'm willing to maybe look at this trade-off again." And so this is a very common thing as part of all of our 6 monthly progress meetings with people, is that your goals change over time, or the trade-off that you're willing to accept changes over time. So for her in this case, she said, "I'm getting a bit sick of it," and I think it was actually a part of the workplace. She was working with a different boss at that point in time. So we looked at, okay, what would it take to retire earlier? So, and we worked out that we discussed it kind of at length and worked out that she wasn't actually willing to make the trade-off to put more money in. So we discussed, you could not travel for the next 3 years and save that money, put that into super. What else? Where else could you shave some costs? Yep. But she really enjoys her lifestyle as it is now, and enjoys that. And so she kind of went, okay, well, it had been more of an event than anything else. And at the end of an hour of that, she went, all right, I'm happy to keep everything going as is. Yes. But I think that even that discussion was valuable for her, because she then went back to work and went, that's a price that I've accepted and I'm willing to pay. It's not that she was at work every week then saying, should I be doing more or less? Or we'd had the conversation and she went, right, this is how it's going to be, and I'm just going to gut this out. And that's what she'd worked out.
Look, there's some context there, isn't there? Because you look at, if you did move to part-time, the trade-off then is that you draw less money in retirement, you retire at the same time, or you work longer part-time. And then so every action has a
that ties very neatly into my next meeting.
Have I jumped the gun again?
So December of 2017, 6 months later, she actually came in and said, and we discussed again, she still wasn't enjoying her work that much. But I sort of asked the question of, we worked out that she works, she's on her feet all day. And so basically by the end of the week, it was just more, I think, physical exhaustion than anything else. Yep. And so that was kind of one that we then looked at. And it's human beings, we extrapolate out, this is our gift and our weakness is that, so by the end of the week, she'd be exhausted. And I think that a part of what happened is that she would look at it and go, geez, if I'm still doing this in 5 years' time and I'm here on my feet at 2:00 on Friday afternoon, I'm going to be completely over it. And so that was actually one of the levers that we looked to pull, is to say, righto, well, instead of working full-time all the way through to age 61 and then retiring fully, what if we move to part-time work earlier? Yep. So move to 3 days a week. So, at age 58, for example, but then work part-time until 64, I think was the example and we were just playing around with figures at that point in time. But that then really made a difference to her and how she felt about her work then. I think that she sort of went, yep, that's actually what I want to do. That's the plan that we're going to move towards. And so even though we didn't change, she was still working full time, she then kind of had a bit of light at the end of the tunnel there as to go, okay, well, it's only a few years to go until I'm going to be only working a few days a week.
Yep.
So, and we're seeing that more and more now, is that the model of working full time and then retiring fully, less and less.
Less and less. It's a shift that I've only noticed, or we've only noticed in the last couple of years, really. If I had to say so. More and more people, the black and white of working full time right up until your 65th birthday, and then retiring full time. It's such a grey area now where people are scaling back to 3 days a week, or they're pivoting into a different career later in life. So look, again, at the risk of stealing your thunder here, Dallas, you're probably going to mean, like, it just makes such a difference if someone can work part time. They thought they were going to retire at 61, 62, but they've said, okay, we'll go part time to 65 after that. Like the pressure it takes off what they're drawing from their superannuation those early years, it makes such a difference, doesn't it?
Well, and it's funny because, so again, I feel like we're really digressing a fair bit today, but I was actually just thinking about this with another client that I met with yesterday. It's actually almost easier for a couple. So for these guys, they're going on an extended holiday now, and when they come back, they're going to be semi-retired, and they're both going to work part-time. But so they're going to work part-time, but because they're both working part-time, not earning a huge amount, paying minimal income tax, it's pretty easy for them to earn enough to live on. So, especially as a couple, it's not only do you get to cut back a bit earlier, but if you're both willing to do that, you can pretty much replace your income on half of the. If you compare both members of a couple working full time, paying income tax, all those sorts of things. If you look at the net amount that they get to keep every week, you can cut your workload in half, and you get to keep more than half of the net income.
Yes, because they're working full time, they're paying tax. Some stages they're still paying off a mortgage that we pay out at that retirement time.
Exactly right.
We're asking them to put in on average $30,000 a year
that's
for
right.
superannuation.
And
so when you get to that point where you go, okay, well you can move back to part time work. We don't want you to put any money into your superannuation now. We're just going to take less from it because we thought this was about the time that we were going to flip over and actually start taking an income from your superannuation now.
It's especially valuable, I think, for people who don't necessarily have a huge income that they want to take in retirement. So in this case, for Jane Smith here, she only wants $50,000 a year to live on. So when she reaches semi-retirement, rather than earning $60,000 a year gross and then paying tax and all the rest of it and getting to keep $50,000 to live on, she can cut her workload in half, earn $30,000 a year. She gets to keep pretty much all of that.
Nearly all of it.
And she's only got to draw $20,000 a year to top that up.
From her superannuation.
From her superannuation,
which is drawn tax free. She's over 60 by that stage, which is an important thing. And the way it's structured as well, not only is that income drawn tax free if set up correctly, it doesn't even show up anywhere on your tax return. So the $30,000 that she earns,
that's her only source.
The 20 that she draws from her super doesn't even push that 30 up into a higher tax bracket. Right. That $20,000 drawn from her superannuation doesn't show up anywhere. It's really effective if done correctly.
So those were sort of the discussions we were having over those couple of years, and so I guess the nuts and bolts of what we were doing didn't change too much. It was more the actual goal, the area that we were working towards was sort of changing. And I think it was that 6-monthly progress meeting that was really helping her know that there was an end in sight and there was something that we were working towards. The next big change was in May 2019. So again, I won't get into the details, but there was then a situation where she could actually take money from the investment that she had in her own name. It was actually through an investment bond, but she could take that money, sell down $13,000 a year from that investment, contribute that into superannuation, and claim a tax deduction for it. So she could basically pick up tax savings of $3,000 a year just via a bit of a paperwork shuffle behind the scenes there.
Yeah, so she was taking money from retirement savings. She's robbing Peter to pay Paul here, classically. She's moving that into...
Yeah. We normally have a negative connotation of that, but in this case, it worked really well to rob Peter to pay Paul.
To pick up an additional $3,000. Look, when you look at figures like that on paper, they lose some of the meaning. I mean, if $3,000 appeared here in a brown paper bag, it'd look more impressive than what you have written on this piece of paper, which is
that's
$3K.
And it was
it makes a difference to
again, as a very concrete one. If every year she wanted to go on a trip overseas, $3,000 is more than enough for your flights to pretty much anywhere in the world.
It is,
every year, just by is basically two forms that we were filling out.
Yeah,
that was paying for her flights every single year, which was fantastic. And again, it's sometimes you know there's the old saying, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Sometimes maybe there is a free lunch.
Well, there is. So one of we love free money, don't we? We love free money, and look, with taxation legislation, we know that we can get a free return overnight. For people. To the tune generally of some 20% to 24.5%.
That's right.
Of what they actually contribute in. So
and you're right. The thing you love about that is that we are having all those conversations about trade-offs and giving things up and the rest of it. But a tax saving is fantastic in that the only one who's giving something up is the ATO. Which most people are pretty happy that they're on the receiving end of that.
That's right.
So it's a great one. Anytime we can pick up any dollar of tax saving, we want to do that because it's not impacting our clients' lifestyle now. It's not impacting their lifestyle in the future. It's like you say, it's free money. So, but you're right. It does sort of lose a bit of that gloss when you say $3,000. But based on if you look at her income and how much she's living on, how much she wants to live on, $3,000 is a big whack out of $50,000 that she just doesn't have to find now.
That's right. And look, because she loves travel, look, it's like you said, that pays for flights. You take that in a brown paper bag and it pays for your spending money wherever you are.
That's right.
You've got however way you want to dice that up. That makes a big difference to anyone's lifestyle. Especially when you're going on travel and holidays. And look, it's funded by the ATO in this case, and it's a guaranteed rate of return.
That's right.
Because it's a return that you get overnight. Whilst we know that legislation is in place right now, you take advantage of it for that year.
That's right.
And it's a guaranteed return, and there's just no downside to that.
That's right. And again, continue on the mode of the tax savings. So November of 2019, there was, again, I won't get into the details, but there was, we'd reached a point in time where what she could actually do at that point was she took a lump sum from her investment and contributed that into superannuation. And that was separate to the amount that she could claim as a tax deduction. That was purely based on minimising the tax on the earnings on that investment. So that's the other, again, a lever that we can pull there is that if you've got, again, in her case where she started with $500,000 in retirement savings and half of it is in her own name and half of it is in superannuation, we reached a point where we could actually move that into superannuation and the earnings tax on that was 15% versus the earnings tax on that money invested in her own name was 34.5%.
So the money that money makes, you're referring to, so the rate of return every year, from that point on was only going to be taxed at 15%, versus 34.5%. So a tax saving there, and coming at the right time as well because it's approaching when has she's approaching meeting her condition of release for superannuation. So if she needed to access it, she can.
That's right, and that was the trade-off that we discussed that in great length, is that the trade-off was putting that money into super meant she couldn't access it at this point in time. We discussed how much was left in that investment and could she access it and all those sorts of things, what emergencies might pop up. So this was all, and it's very, again, you put one line and say, we took a lump sum and did this, but the reality is that was a big conversation so that she was then completely comfortable with the idea of doing this and minimising that tax and having the trade-off of not being able to access quite as much money. So that was our most recent progress meeting. At that point in time, she had a retirement savings balance. So if you remember that she started with $503,000 in June of 2015. So November 2019, her retirement savings balance was $718,000. So she's basically, this balance has grown by $215,000 over the last 4.5 years. Now, over that 4.5 years, she's given up some money out of her own pocket. So she's given up $130 a fortnight.
Yep, and just to be clear, that's the $200 that she was salary sacrificing, but that reduced her pay only by $131 a fortnight.
That's right.
So that's what you're referring to there.
Yep. So that was just over $15,000 out of her own pocket.
So the $131 reduction in pay per fortnight times 4.5 years, $15,000, a bit over $15,000.
Yep.
That she's had to give up.
Yep.
In order to help that along.
Yep. So basically, she was $200,000 over and above what she's had to give up there. Yep. So again, there's no such thing as a free lunch, and she had to, throughout that last 4.5 years, there's been volatility, and that balance has gone up and gone down, and it will continue to do so. But as you can see, most of that $200,000 has been driven by tax savings and by higher growth on her retirement savings, which are two things that we could assist with, and that it's not costing her anything each week to be able to access those things.
Look, what I like about this, because we could be sitting here right now, and her balance could actually be lower.
Yep.
Technically than where it was because of market volatility.
Yep. That's right.
We know that ship would be righted at some stage.
That's right.
But what I really like is our approach to where we actually sit down at the start, and you had that discussion with Jane and said, what are you willing to give up? I can only afford $131 reduction in pay per fortnight. I want to retire a little bit earlier at age 61, not 65. I like to travel, I like to do all these things. So sitting right back, you said, okay, knowing all that, what we actually need to eke out of this is an 8% rate of return.
That's right.
I'm thinking without you having disclosed that. And you're currently only getting somewhere in the vicinity of a 4 to 5% rate of return. So it was the rate of return that you really looked at and said, okay, well we need to push this up. Historical perspective gives us averages, and it's the best guide that we know. So if we invest in this and this, we can still be well and truly diversified. Look, the historical average rate of return of these things is 8% or 9% or 10% or whatever it is, and you explain the trade-offs. So the trade-offs were stay where you are right now at the lower rate of return. You're just going to have to take less money in retirement as an income, or you're going to have to work longer. Ramifications of that are that you won't be able to travel, for example, when you retire. Oh, that sounds terrible. That's right. What can we do to? Okay, well, the only real thing that we can do is put your money to work a little bit harder. Now, the trade-off for that is that you need to accept volatility, which is why the first meeting that you had with Jane after that, the market had actually dropped by 10%. And she didn't panic because of the fact that you'd had that discussion.
And so I guess that's a really good concrete example here, is that if she had said, and we discussed this in the other podcast the other day, about if she had said to me, I understand everything that you've said, I just don't want to take on any volatility, I want to stay in my defined benefit account. To get into the same position, she would have had to not go on any trips overseas for the last 4.5 years. Every dollar that she spent on travel would have had to go towards that, and probably a little bit extra as well, just to get her to the position that she's in now. And
would it be fair to say that it would have been hard to cut back to part-time work? She would have had to stay full-time. Probably had to work a little bit longer than
all those levers.
So I mean, when you look at all of those types of things, you look at that on one side of the ledger, and then you look on the other side of the ledger and you say, okay, well, the value of your investments in your super balance now is going to go up and down because That's what volatility is.
Yeah.
It's a two-way street.
That's right.
It goes down,
yeah,
but it goes up as well. So when you lay on one side of the ledger, so people's implied biggest fear, before they walk in to see us, their implied biggest fear is, what if the market's down when I retire? The day that I retire, I think that is. I think that's so. They're scared of volatility.
Yeah.
But when you have that discussion and you say, okay, the other fear here is that if we don't work your money a little bit harder in this case, then you won't be able to afford to go on holiday every year. You won't be able to cut back to part-time work, and you won't be able to retire earlier.
That's right.
That becomes a far greater fear. I mean, you know what I mean? And it's just laying it out.
Once you make that tangible, once you make it a concrete thing, most people can then have a rational decision-making process about what do I want to trade off and what am I willing to accept. But if you ask that in isolation, I guess again we tend to bring everything back to diet. But if someone said, "Do you just want to eat donuts every day?" You go, "Yeah, that sounds great." But if someone says, "Do you want to eat donuts every day?" bearing in mind that you will get really fat and you will die early, you go, "Oh, well, maybe I don't want to just eat donuts every day." It's the same sort of thing. And I think further to your point about most people's big fear is that the market will drop when I reach retirement. It's also, even while people are working, before we've had these conversations, most people's fear is, okay, well, I understand that I've got $500,000 in retirement savings. I understand that to get the rate of return that I need to meet my retirement goals, I need to invest that money. But what if the market drops? And so this is why I actually like this case study. That's exactly what happened. We invested that money. The market dropped immediately, only by 10%, which is, as we said, par for the course pretty much every year. But it was, before we'd had these conversations, if I had said, hey, we can invest this money and the market will drop by 10% in the next 2 months, most people would go, oh, that sounds terrible, I don't want to do that.
Yes.
But now 4.5 years on, we're sitting here going, yes, that has dropped and it has picked back up, and you've seen the growth over the last 4.5 years that's put you in this position. And you're now on track to semi-retire at age 58 and work the workload that you want.
And look, you look at market drops; they come and go.
Yeah.
Like, it reminds me of this old German man that I met in Germany.
Yeah.
And it was at a pub on the Reeperbahn, which is this famous. The Beatles used to play there. That's where the Beatles used to.
Oh yeah.
I'm really digressing here now. Anyway, so he spoke a little bit of English. I spoke no German at all, and I had to talk to him. And I said, he said, my name is Tram, and I said, why do they call you Tram? He goes, I come, I go. So that's looking at September 2015, the market dropping by 10% reminds me of Tram. It comes and goes. Like, it comes and goes. Like, so
you've drawn a long bow there. I get where you're coming from.
So no, these drops are naturally occurring things. They come, they go, they recover.
Well,
it happened again.
Well,
so that fully recovered and then grew to new highs. It happened again in December of 2018.
That's right. I haven't even put that in. But
so you haven't even put that in because you didn't happen to meet at that point in time. So a lot of people actually don't even know this is happening because it's in between the meeting times that we have with them.
Yeah.
So they you'll have a meeting with people and you'll say, okay, in between that time that we actually last met, the value of the price of your superannuation fund investments dropped by 10% or 15%.
Yeah.
It's now fully recovered and grown to a new high.
Yeah.
And people are very surprised at that because they actually had no idea.
Yeah.
Those types, I've been in the industry since 2001. I've seen so many of these drops. the first 10 years of my working life had quite a few, but they all come, they all went. They all came, they all went. They've recovered, and you look back now and you say, okay, what happened then actually has no bearing on where we are now because that's the average rates of return that we're looking at.
Take that into account. And I think that's a part of our role there is that these progress meetings that we have with people is that a part of it is to look at what's happening at those points in time. But it's also sometimes really refocusing people on what it is that we're actually trying to achieve here. Because it's easy to, you turn the TV on and you see there's scary headlines about all sorts of things, and then we get stuck in our day-to-day lives and worried about what's happening day to day. It's really important just to zoom back out every now and then and go, what is it we're actually trying to achieve here? Where is it that we're, and in this case for Jane Smith here, are we on track to be able to do what you want to do at age? Are you doing what you want to do now, and are you on track to do what you want to do in a few years' time and beyond? Yes? Well, then that's great. What the market does in the meantime really has no impact on that. It's really just, are you on track to be able to fund the lifestyle that you want?
That's right.
So I think that's why I really wanted to go through this case study, is that, as you said, I think people's big fear is a couple of things, is that they're going to invest their money and it's going to drop immediately, and which actually has happened here. And their other big fear is that they're going to come in to meet with a financial advisor, and the advisor is going to take all their money away from them. And that isn't what has happened here. We've been able to have all those discussions, make all those decisions, and trade off being able to get where she wants to be in the future while still living a great lifestyle that she's really enjoying at the moment.
Any more to add?
No, I think
good
that's
place
it.
to wrap up. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Lighthouse Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.